The champagne glass slipped from my trembling fingers just as my sister's voice cut through the elegant chatter of Manhattan's most exclusive charity gala. "Jessica, you're absolutely pathetic." Madison's words were low enough to sound intimate, but sharp enough to slice the room in half. Her emerald dress caught the chandelier's light, every sequin flashing like a spotlight on my shame. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. The string quartet kept playing, but the notes felt thin, unable to drown the humiliation that flushed hot across my face. I was Jessica Whitmore, 31 years old, standing in a black dress I'd worn to every event for the past 2 years. Clearance rack. Practical. My only attempt at blending into a world that had always reminded me I didn't belong. Madison's eyes swept over me, polished and merciless. "Look at you," she hissed, her smile frozen in its practiced curve. "Bargain store clothes, pretending you're part of this." The truth was, I wasn't here for the glamour. I wasn't here because I believed in it. I was here because skipping the Hartwell Foundation gala meant letting Madison write me out of the family narrative entirely. She wouldn't let me forget that my invitation was charity, a pity plus one. I tried to answer, but the words tangled in my throat. Madison didn't wait. She pivoted toward a cluster of women draped in designer silk and dripping with diamonds. "This is my sister," she announced brightly. "She works in healthcare." One of them tilted her head. "Are you a doctor?" "I'm a nurse," I said, steady as I could. "How admirable," came the reply. Too polite, too distant. The kind of praise that sounds like a pat on the head. Madison's laugh sparkled. "She's very hands-on. We keep telling her she could do so much more." The cuts were tiny but relentless. I clenched the stem of my glass until it hurt, reminding myself that in the ICU, I was trusted, respected, needed. Here, in the glittering ballroom, I was a footnote to Madison's curated perfection. I excused myself to the bar, where the young bartender gave me a sympathetic look as he poured. "Rough crowd?" he asked softly. "You could say that." I took a sip, letting the burn steady me, when my phone buzzed in my purse. The screen glowed bright against the dark wood counter. Mercy General Hospital. Dr. Martinez. I stared at my reflection in the polished mirror behind the bar. Auburn hair pulled tight, grandmother's pearl earrings catching a flicker of light, and eyes that refused to dim. In one world, I was the charity case sister. In another, someone's life might depend on me. And in that moment, I realized this call would change everything. The phone vibrated again in my hand, the screen casting a blue glow across my reflection in the ballroom mirror. Behind me, the chandeliers dripped gold onto Madison's perfect world. Ahead of me, Dr. Martinez's name blinked insistently, pulling me back into mine. I stepped into the marble hallway, the murmur of the gala fading into a muffled hum. "This is Jessica," I whispered. "Jessica, it's Martinez. I'm sorry to bother you, but Harrison in bed 7 has been agitated all night. His family's here, and they're asking for you specifically. They say you're the only one who can calm him down." The image of Mr. Harrison's weathered hands gripping the bed rails flashed in my mind. He'd been terrified for weeks, his fear spiking his heart rate, his breathing uneven until I explained each beep and alarm in terms he could understand. He trusted me. And now, in a ballroom filled with people who dismissed me, his voice, his need, cut sharper than Madison's insults ever could. "I'll be there in 40 minutes, I said. When I hung up, I caught sight of myself in the mirror again, black dress, pearl earrings, my grandmother's pearls, the only valuable thing I owned. But for the first time that night, I didn't see a woman begging for a seat at the table. I saw a nurse who mattered, whose presence meant something. I walked back through the ballroom, heels clicking against marble, past Madison's circle of admirers. She was mid-laugh, recounting some story about her poor sister who chose service over success. The words floated through the air like poisoned perfume. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. Outside, the cold Manhattan night hit me like clarity. The taxi line stretched down the block, but I didn't wait. I ducked into the subway, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. People jostled past me. Construction workers, students, night shift cleaners. They smelled of sweat and exhaustion, not champagne. And yet, I felt more at home among them than I had all evening. By the time I reached Mercy General, I'd stripped out of the dress and back into scrubs. The fabric smelled faintly of antiseptic, but to me it was armor. The ICU greeted me with the beeping rhythm of monitors and the soft hiss of ventilators. "Thank God you're here," Maria, the night nurse, said. "Mr. Harrison's been calling for you every 10 minutes. His daughter's pacing the waiting room." I found him gripping the rails, his face pale with panic. "Mr. Harrison, it's me," I said gently, wrapping my hand over his. His eyes opened wide with relief. "Jessica, thank heavens. I was having those dreams again, the ones where I can't breathe. The other nurse, she's kind, but she doesn't explain things the way you do." For the next hour, I explained every number on his monitor, every adjustment in his meds, every beep of the machines. His daughter, Linda, sat nearby, her hands twisting in her lap until the lines on her forehead smoothed. When she finally hugged me, her voice broke. "Thank you. Dad says you're the only one who treats him like a person instead of a condition." That was it. That was my worth. Not the brand of my dress, not whether Madison approved, not whether Harold Piton thought my insights were cute but irrelevant. My worth was here, in the relief that softened Linda's face, in the way Mr. Harrison's breathing steadied when I explained the machines weren't his enemy. When my shift ended at 2 a.m, I drove my beat-up Honda through near-empty streets back to Queens. My phone lit up with messages. "Madison, where did you disappear to? Trevor said you left early. Rude to sneak out without saying goodbye." Another, "Appropriate isn't the same as impressive." And then, a number I didn't recognize. "Jessica, this is Catherine Walsh from tonight's event. I hope you don't mind. I got your contact from the Hartwell list. Would you join me for coffee this week? I'd like to continue our conversation about healthcare advocacy." I stared at the text, stunned. For the first time all night, someone from that glittering world had seen me, not as a charity case, but as a professional with value. I dropped my phone on the counter and caught my reflection in the kitchen window. The same tired auburn hair, the same dark circles under my eyes. But something had shifted. I no longer saw only exhaustion. I saw strength. I saw choice. 2 days later, the phone rang again. Jonathan Mitchell, my grandmother's lawyer. His voice was calm, but his words shook me. "Your grandmother left a substantial estate. Properties, investments. She wanted you to inherit the bulk of it." The letter he handed me trembled in my hands. "Jessica, you chose compassion over convenience. This inheritance isn't a reward. It's a tool. Use it to live freely, without financial fear." I read her words twice, 3 times, tears burning my eyes. All those years of Madison mocking my limitations, my paycheck-to-paycheck life, my tiny apartment. And now the truth. My grandmother had seen me. She had trusted me to carry something Madison never could. I walked out of that law office into the biting wind of lower Manhattan, clutching the envelope. The city roared around me. Horns, voices, the hum of power. But inside me, something steadied. Madison had always held money over me like a weapon. That weapon was gone. Still, I kept the inheritance quiet. I needed time to breathe, to decide how to wield this new reality before my family twisted it into another performance. That night, I sat on my couch, pearls in my palm, phone buzzing with unanswered calls from Madison. For the first time in years, I didn't flinch, because I knew the ground beneath us was shifting, and Madison didn't even know it yet. And when she found out, nothing between us would ever be the same. I kept my grandmother's letter folded neatly in my nightstand drawer, its creases already soft from the number of times I unfolded it to remind myself the words were real. Use this gift to live freely. The inheritance had shifted something inside me, but outside, nothing changed. I still worked doubles. I still drove the 10-year-old Honda. I still made coffee in my Queens kitchen before catching the subway to Mercy General. And I stayed quiet. I knew my family would weaponize this news the moment they smelled it. Madison would shape it into another performance, another lecture about how to position myself correctly. Trevor would calculate percentages before I finished the sentence. My mother would wonder which of her cocktail friends she could impress by mentioning it. So I waited. Instead, I focused on work. In the ICU, no one cared about designer gowns or gala guest lists. What mattered was steady hands and clear words. Patients didn't ask if my dress came from a clearance rack. They asked if they were going to survive the night. But even at work, the gala clung to me like a perfume I couldn't wash off. Maria, my fellow night nurse, caught me between rounds one evening. "Was that your sister I saw on TV last week? Some charity luncheon?" I nodded. Madison's face was everywhere. Society pages, glossy magazines, online spreads. My face, if it appeared at all, was only as a shadow next to hers. Maria smiled. "She looks polished. But you look alive in here." Her words warmed me more than I expected. 3 days later, I met Catherine Walsh for coffee at a cafe on the Upper East Side. The place radiated quiet wealth. Fresh flowers on the tables, staff who moved with practiced discretion, porcelain cups instead of paper. Catherine rose to greet me with a genuine embrace. "I'm glad you came," she said, sliding a cup of their signature blend toward me. "Tell me, what keeps you in cardiac care?" I told her about the Harrison family, about the way Mr. Harrison's breathing steadied when I explained what each machine did, about the relief in his daughter's hug when she finally understood her father wasn't numbers on a monitor, but a man with a fragile but fighting heart. Catherine listened the way few people did. She didn't cut me off or pat me on the head with a polite smile. She leaned forward, eyes intent, as if every detail mattered. "That," she said softly, "is exactly the perspective missing from healthcare policy. Decisions are made in boardrooms by people who've never touched a patient's hand. We need voices like yours at the table." I hesitated. Madison's voice was already in my head. "Stay in your lane, Jessica. You follow orders. You don't make them." "I'm not sure I have the credentials for policy work," I admitted. Catherine's brow lifted. "You have 3 years of ICU experience, a bachelor's degree, and daily frontline knowledge of how policies land on actual patients. What credentials do you think you're missing?" Her question hit hard. I realized how deeply Madison's narrative had seeped into me, that I believed my work wasn't enough because it wasn't wrapped in titles or prestige. "You're right," I said slowly. "I do have something to offer." "Good," Catherine smiled, "because we'd like you on our advisory committee, flexible hours, compensation, and real impact." For the first time in years, I felt a stirring of possibility not tied to exhaustion or survival. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Madison. "Emergency family meeting. Mothers, 7 p.m. Don't be late." A second text followed. "Trevor's promotion announcement. Big changes. Family dynamics to discuss." I slipped the phone back into my bag. "Family obligations," I said with a rueful smile. Catherine studied me, something knowing in her eyes. "Remember what I said. Don't let anyone convince you your voice doesn't matter." That night, I walked into our mother's brownstone with a bottle of mid-shelf wine in hand. Madison's BMW was already parked out front, polished like everything else in her life. Inside, Trevor and Madison were perched on the cream sofa like a magazine spread, Mother in her signature knit suit, her expression a mix of pride and boredom. "Jessica," my mother said, kissing the air near my cheek, "you look tired. Madison mentioned you left the gala early again. A patient emergency?" "Yes," I said simply. Madison's eyes narrowed. "We were just discussing networking. Jessica, you really should learn the nuances. Harold Piton was visibly uncomfortable when you launched into medical jargon." I remembered the conversation vividly. Harold had asked about protocols, and I'd answered. But in Madison's version, I was naive, embarrassing, too earnest. Trevor chimed in. "In business, you have to read the room. Knowing when to smile and when to nod, it takes time." Their words used to sting. Tonight, I heard them differently. I thought of Catherine's belief, of Mr. Harrison's trust, of my grandmother's letter. I realized I no longer needed their approval. Still, I stayed silent. Let them talk. Let them lay out their plans for my better future. Pharmaceutical sales, healthcare administration, a corporate role with prestige. When the meeting ended, Madison pulled me aside. "Think about what we said. You can't work shifts forever. You need to position yourself better." I met her eyes steady. "Maybe positioning isn't everything." Her brows knit. "You really don't get it, do you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The following morning, I changed into scrubs and stepped into the ICU like always. But I felt different. I wasn't dragging myself in as the overlooked sister. I was walking into a place where my worth was measured in steady heartbeats, not designer gowns. Later that week, Madison showed up at the nurse's station unannounced, her Chanel suit sharp against the antiseptic corridors. Colleagues glanced at me with raised brows. Madison smiled too brightly. "I just wanted to see your world," she said. But her eyes scanned the unit like an inspector. "With your new resources, you could be doing so much more," she whispered. Dr. Martinez interrupted, asking me to see a patient's family. I excused myself. Patients come first here. Madison's smile faltered. For once, she was the one dismissed. That night, Catherine called. "The board voted unanimously. They want you testifying before state committees. Are you ready?" I looked at the pearls in my jewelry dish and my grandmother's letter beside them. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." But beneath that calm answer, a current swirled. Madison didn't know about the inheritance yet. She didn't know about the committee. And when she did, the balance of power in our family would tilt forever. I folded my scrubs for the next day, heart steady, knowing the silence wouldn't last much longer. The brownstone living room glowed with soft lamplight. The air scented faintly of my mother's favorite lilies. On the surface, everything looked serene. Cream sofa, polished glass coffee table, wine poured into crystal stems. But beneath the arrangement pulsed something heavier, like the pressure before a storm. Madison perched beside Trevor, posture perfect, emerald nails tapping against her glass. My mother sat across from me in her signature St. John knit, silver hair arranged into effortless order. I had the wingback chair, the one my father once claimed as his. It felt like the hot seat. "Jessica, darling," Mother began, her tone even, "we've been worried about you. Madison mentioned difficulties at the gala." My stomach tightened. Difficulties. That was her genteel code for humiliation. Madison leaned forward, voice syrupy with concern. "Jess, I realized afterward I may not have prepared you for networking at that level. You launched into clinical talk with Harold Peaton, and he was just being polite. That kind of detail, it makes people uncomfortable. You need to keep things light." Trevor nodded, slipping in his own practiced wisdom. "Read the room. These executives aren't there to talk shop. They want connection, social ease. You came across intense." I'd heard this script before. Every time I shrank, apologizing for being too much or not enough. Tonight, something in me resisted. "Harold asked me about protocols," I said evenly. I answered his question. Madison's smile flickered. "Jess, you don't understand. He didn't expect you to give a real answer, just a polite one." Mother folded her hands, her voice calm but sharp. "We only want you to make good impressions, dear." It hit me then. This wasn't Trevor's promotion celebration at all. This was an intervention, a coordinated attempt to reshape me into something more palatable. Trevor cleared his throat. "We've been thinking your background could transition beautifully into pharmaceutical sales, or maybe corporate wellness. Better money, better connections, more sustainable long-term." Madison added, "Sarah Hutchinson from prep school made the switch. She's thriving. You could too." Their faces radiated helpful concern, like they were rescuing me from drowning. But I wasn't drowning. I was breathing just fine. "Let me make sure I understand," I said slowly. "You want me to abandon patient care for a sales job because it looks better at charity galas?" Madison stiffened. "Not just looks. Financial stability. Jessica, you're 31, living paycheck to paycheck. No retirement plan, no family of your own. Don't you want more?" For years, those questions caged me. Tonight, they opened a door. "What if money wasn't the problem?" I asked. Trevor laughed softly, dismissive. "Money is always the problem. Even passion has to be paid for." I set my glass down carefully, the stem clicking against crystal. "Not for me, not anymore." The room stilled. Madison's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" I took a breath, hearing my grandmother's voice in my head. "Use this gift to live freely." Grandmother Rose left me an inheritance, substantial enough that I don't have to make career decisions based on money again. Mother's lips parted in disbelief. "That can't be right. Rose had nothing." That's what we thought, I said, pulling the letter from my bag. But she'd been investing for decades. Real estate, stocks, bonds. She kept it hidden until after her death, and she left most of it to me. Trevor leaned forward, suddenly alert. How substantial? Substantial enough, I said firmly. Enough to pay my debts, buy a home, live without fear. More than enough to make your concerns about my future irrelevant. Madison's wine glass landed hard on the table, liquid sloshing. Why didn't you tell us? Because I needed time to process it without being told how to spend it, I said, steady. Outside opinions? Madison's voice sharpened. We're your family. We've been worried sick about you, and all this time I was making my own choices, I cut in. My voice didn't rise, but it carried weight. You assumed I was struggling. You built our entire dynamic on my supposed inferiority. That narrative doesn't work anymore. Madison's eyes widened, emerald hard and bright. You mean to tell me you let me worry, let me carry the image of the responsible sister, while I lived my life the way I wanted, I said. Not because I had no choice, because I chose it. Mother's composure cracked for the briefest second. Jessica, how much are we talking? Enough, I repeated, refusing to turn my grandmother's gift into a competition. The silence stretched. Trevor's jaw ticked. Madison's face flushed with a cocktail of shock and fury. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one shrinking in the chair. They were recalibrating, realizing the foundation had shifted beneath their feet. Well, Trevor finally said, voice brittle, that changes things. Madison's tone was sharp now, stripped of its polished veneer. You're telling me you've been driving that old Honda and working doubles while sitting on millions? I was living my life, I said, because I like my life. The inheritance doesn't change who I am. It just means I don't have to apologize for it anymore. Madison's hand trembled on her glass. So what now? You keep playing nurse while the rest of us, pretend this doesn't change everything? It changes nothing about me, I said softly. Only how you see me. The air felt electric, charged with disbelief and wounded pride. I rose, smoothing the skirt of my dress. Trevor, congratulations on your promotion. I hope you celebrate it properly. Jessica, wait, Madison snapped, standing quickly. We need to discuss this further. There are implications. There aren't, I said, calm as stone. Nothing has changed except your knowledge. I'm still me, still choosing nursing, still choosing service over status. Her mouth opened, but no words came. I moved toward the door, pearls brushing against my neck like a quiet reminder. My grandmother's voice echoed in memory, heal from a position of strength. Behind me, their voices rose, urgent, tangled, full of panic, but I didn't turn back. The cool night air greeted me outside, crisp and clean. For the first time in years, I felt taller walking away than I ever had sitting obediently in that wingback chair. And I knew. Tomorrow, the calls would start. Madison would claw for control. Mother would calculate her position. Trevor would circle with business questions. But tonight, the silence was mine. The balance had shifted. And there was no going back. The family meeting had ended with slammed glasses and stunned silence, but the aftermath was louder than anything said in that living room. By the next morning, my phone was a battlefield. 3 voicemails from Madison, each one sharper than the last. Jessica, we need to talk about the implications of your announcement. Then, you can't make reckless decisions with that inheritance. Call me immediately. Finally, if you won't listen to reason, at least let me help manage things before you ruin everything. A handwritten letter arrived from my mother, the cursive elegant but suffocating. Please be prepared to discuss future planning. It's important for the family. Trevor, never subtle, somehow tracked down my work number. His voicemail was cool and professional. There are serious tax implications. You need guidance, Jessica. Don't ignore this. I didn't answer. I charted vitals, adjusted drips, and let silence do my talking. On Wednesday, while reviewing medication orders, Maria leaned over the nurse's station. Heads up, she murmured. Your sister's here. Looks like she walked out of a magazine. Through the glass, I saw Madison, flawless in Chanel, hair shining under the ICU's fluorescent glare. She waved at me, her smile stretched thin. I stepped out. What are you doing here? Surprise. she said lightly. "I wanted to see where you work, especially now." Her eyes swept over the monitors and tubes as though cataloging evidence. "My work hasn't changed," I said. "But it could," she pressed. "With your resources, you could move past this. Medical school, administration, something worthy of your status. Patients are waiting," Dr. Martinez interrupted gently, handing me a chart. I turned back to Madison. "This isn't a place for social visits. We'll talk later." Her smile faltered. "Dinner tonight, my treat." "I'm on a double," I replied, and walked away. My colleagues watched her leave, their whispers trailing. Maria tilted her head. "Your sister seems intense." "She's adjusting," I said. "That's all." 2 days later, Catherine called. "Jessica, the board voted unanimously. We want you on the Metropolitan Healthcare Initiative Advisory Committee and," her voice warmed, "you've been invited to present at the Healthcare Innovation Gala." The world steadied under my feet. "A keynote?" "Yes, the premier event. Policymakers, executives, researchers. It's the room that matters." I pressed my hand to the cool stairwell wall, breath shaking out in relief. "I'll do it." That Sunday, another family brunch, this time in a village restaurant with stiff white linens. On the surface, it was celebration. Underneath, it was interrogation. "We're happy for you, Jessica," my mother said, her voice silk over steel. "But you'll need guidance. Wealth brings responsibility." "I've hired an attorney," I said. "And an advisor?" Trevor asked. "Yes." Madison dabbed her lips with her napkin. "Then let's discuss positioning. With your new status, certain doors open. Committees, clubs, influence. You can't waste this." "I'm not auditioning for your circles," I said calmly. Her smile froze. "You have the chance to be anything." "I already am." The table quieted. Trevor busied himself with market talk. My mother sighed theatrically, but the tension crackled, sharp as static. Outside afterward, Madison caught my arm. "Why insist on staying small?" "Purpose isn't small," I said, "and neither am I." Her eyes narrowed, but I walked away. The next week, the ICU became proof of my choices. Mr. Harrison's daughter hugged me after I translated charts into words she could understand. Mrs. Chen's family thanked me for sitting with them late into the night. This was power, not the kind Madison measured in country clubs, but in lives steadied by truth. Yet the pressure didn't stop. My mother called again with concerns. Trevor emailed spreadsheets. Madison texted daily. "We need to manage optics." I didn't reply. I had a gala to prepare for. Catherine's office sent a packet with names and formats. Dr. Rebecca Chen, Chief Medical Officer at New York Presbyterian, would moderate. The other panelists were physicians, policy directors, researchers. 6 months ago, I would have shrunk at the thought. Now, I underlined one line in my notes. "Say the part no one else will say." At the hospital, Dr. Morrison, the physician Harold Peaton had preferred speaking with at Hartwell, approached me. "We're struggling with patient compliance, post-discharge. Could you perhaps offer input?" I met his gaze. "The problem isn't just education, it's cost. You can't adhere to medication you can't afford. Integrate social workers from day one, not at discharge." His eyebrows lifted. "We should discuss further." A door cracked open, and this time I didn't hesitate to walk through. The week of the gala, Catherine called again. "Remember, they don't need you polished. They need you honest." The morning of the event, my phone buzzed with a text. "2 tickets, please. Catherine's office said board members can attend. Madison." Of course. That evening, the Metropolitan Museum's Great Hall glowed under golden arches. Unlike Hartwell's glittering social contest, this room thrummed with purpose. Physicians, legislators, advocates, people who cared about outcomes, not appearances. Backstage, Catherine clasped my hand. "Breathe, this is your ground." From the wings, I scanned the crowd. Harold Peaton in the front row, a scatter of Hartwell socialites with their diamonds, and at the center, emerald dress, shining, Madison. Beside her, Trevor's practiced smile. The MC's voice rang out. "Our final speaker tonight brings a perspective often absent from policy discussions, frontline care." Applause swelled. Dr. Chen gestured me forward. My clutch buzzed. A text lit the screen. "In the audience, looking forward to your talk, Anthony Richardson." I spotted him across the hall, silver hair, calm authority. He raised his hand slightly, steadying me with the smallest gesture. I closed the clutch, drew a breath, and stepped toward the podium. This was the counterstrike, not with raised voices in a family parlor, but here, under lights, where truth carried weight. And for the first time in my life, Madison would watch me stand, not as her little sister in clearance black, but as myself. The microphone was cool beneath my fingers, the podium a steady anchor under the sweep of golden arches in the Metropolitan Museum's Great Hall. Hundreds of eyes focused on me, but I didn't feel small. For the first time, I felt perfectly sized for my own skin. 6 months ago, I began, my voice steady, I stood at a gala where I was asked about cardiac medication protocols. When I shared my experience from 3 years in the ICU, I was told my perspective wasn't appropriate for the conversation. A ripple moved through the room. Heads turned toward Harold Piton in the front row, his posture stiff. But that moment wasn't about me. It was about how easily frontline voices get dismissed. Nurses, respiratory therapists, techs, the people who see the failures when protocols don't fit the patient in the bed. I paused, letting the silence press against the chandeliers. We are not just following orders. We are catching errors before they kill. We are translating medical jargon into language families can bear. We are reminding the system that patients aren't line items. They're human beings. Applause rose, swelling like a tide. I breathed in the sound, not as validation, but as proof. Truth carried. For 15 minutes, I laid out case studies. The elderly man rationing meds because insurance left him gaps, the family lost in a maze of forms while their father coded, the protocols that prized efficiency over dignity. My words weren't polished. They were raw, born from the bedside. And the audience leaned in. Executives scribbled notes. Legislators nodded. Even the hardened faces softened. I ended simply, healthcare policy without frontline voices is like urban planning without speaking to the people who live there. If we want systems that heal, we need to value everyone at the table, title or not. The applause was immediate, and then sustained. I blinked as people rose to their feet. Catherine stood beaming. Dr. Chen clapped hard enough to echo. But my eyes went to the center table. Madison, emerald dress shimmering under museum lights, sat frozen. Then, slowly, she rose with the crowd. Her smile was taut, but her eyes were wide, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. The reception after blurred in a whirl of handshakes and offers. Dr. Morrison asked if I'd consult on communication training for residents. A Johns Hopkins researcher pressed her card into my palm. A Mount Sinai director invited me to testify before their committee. And then Anthony Richardson stepped through the crowd, tall, silver-haired, his presence drawing quiet deference. "Ms. Whitmore," he said, warmth in his voice, "that was extraordinary. We need people like you leading conversations, not silenced at the edges." We shook hands. His grip was firm, his eyes steady. "I'd like to discuss a partnership, corporate wellness, policy, advocacy, something that builds on your strength." For the first time, I didn't feel like a charity case or a curiosity. I felt like an equal. Across the room, Madison's gaze burned. Her world tilted while mine finally leveled. Outside, under the crisp Manhattan night, she caught up to me. "Jessica, wait." Her heels clicked against the stone as Trevor idled the BMW at the curb. Her face was stripped of performance now, confused, raw. "6 months ago, you were my little sister who needed guidance. Tonight, you're being courted by CEOs and commanding ovations. I don't understand how this happened." I met her eyes, calm. "It happened because I stopped pretending to be smaller than I am. The inheritance didn't change me. It just removed the fear that kept me quiet." Her mouth opened, then closed. Finally, she asked, almost tentative, "Can we talk? As equals?" "Yes," I said gently, "but only as equals." For the first time in years, I saw it, genuine respect flickering behind her eyes. That night, on the subway ride home, I caught my reflection in the dark window. The same auburn hair, the same tired eyes from long shifts, but something deeper had shifted. I wasn't the struggling sister, or the tolerated guest, or the woman in clearance black. I was Jessica Whitmore, a nurse, an advocate, a woman who no longer apologized for her life. The phone buzzed, messages from new contacts, Catherine's congratulations, a follow-up from Anthony, but I tucked it away. Tomorrow, I'd return to the ICU, where patients waited, my true ground. I smiled at my reflection. For the first time, I didn't see limitation. I saw strength. And if you're still with me, hearing my story, thank you. I hope it reminds you of this truth. Your worth is not measured by someone else's scale, not by wealth, not by approval, not by comparison, but by the choices you make in alignment with who you are. If my journey spoke to you, I'd love to hear yours. Drop a comment, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and join us here at Family Power Stories. Like, subscribe, and stay with us. Because the stories we tell about resilience, betrayal, and rising stronger are the ones that remind us we are never alone.